What would you do if a know-it-all apprentice, handed to you on a silver platter, refused to do any actual work? In today's story, the protagonist's choice is a masterclass in professional revenge. A few years back, I got a gig working a weekend music festival, 10 rock bands a day, pretty standard stuff. The boss put a solid crew of 4 on it, me, Dreadful Boris, Big Chris, and Hammer. He also told us we'd be taking on an apprentice, the son of a local promoter. We were happy to help train the next generation. That's how we all learned. As it turned out, this kid had an entitled attitude the size of a small country. On the 250-mile journey down in the truck, he boasted that he was already a really good sound engineer and could probably show us a few tricks. Oh, really? We arrived and started unloading a 16-ton truck packed with sound gear, amps, speakers, and 2 massive sound desks. This is heavy stuff, and it takes all hands on deck. But after helping with a single 80-kilo amp rack, the apprentice snottily announced, "I'm a sound engineer, not a humper," and just walked off. This was his first mistake, revealing his fatal flaw, the arrogant belief that he was above the hard work that underpins the entire industry. He had no idea this attitude would be his undoing. An hour later, with the rig all set up, the kid reappeared. I told him, "I'm going to go cable the front of house desk, where we mix for the audience. Perhaps you could help Hammer cable up the speakers." His response? "I don't take orders from girlies." Now, Hammer was 5 feet 9 inches, gorgeous, and as hard as nails, hence the nickname. She was a top-tier engineer, and you just don't mess with her. The rest of us braced for an explosion. Instead, she just smiled sweetly, never a good sign, and said, "Well, I'm sure you'll learn something useful." A while later, I found Hammer looking completely exasperated. The apprentice, despite every cable and port being clearly labeled, had managed to completely mess up plugging in the amplifiers, a mistake that's genuinely hard to make. I found the kid and told him he needed to ask if he wasn't sure. His reply floored me. "I don't need to know all that shit. I'm a sound engineer." He then added, "You're just a bunch of roadies. What do you know?" Before wandering off again. The rest of the weekend was a catalogue of foul-ups. We decided to let him try mixing the next act under my supervision, a simple acoustic duo. The first thing he did was crank the master faders, pushing the entire system to the edge of a massive feedback squeal. I had to physically shove him aside to save the show. Another time, he was sent to the stage to help with a changeover and decided to neaten up the microphone patches, replugging all the vocal mics into the wrong channels right before the band went on. All this was punctuated by a constant stream of comments about how he was a better engineer than all of us. As one commenter later pointed out, he perfectly summed up the type of people everyone hates: entitled, annoying, and stupid. By the end of the second day, we were all exhausted and utterly pissed off. It was time for the get out, the part where we break everything down and load it back in the truck. It's an all-hands-on-deck job, but of course, the apprentice had once again vanished. This brings us to the payoff. We spent 2 backbreaking hours loading that truck in the dark. When we finished, it was nearly 3 a.m. And where was the spotty oik? Nowhere to be seen. We looked for him for a solid 20 minutes, but he was gone. We got back to the truck, looked at each other, and almost in unison, we all said, "Fuck him." We climbed aboard and drove the 250 miles home. The next afternoon, the boss called me, asking why we'd left the kid behind. I gave him the short version of the weekend's events. He told me the apprentice had to call his promoter daddy at 3 a.m. to come get him, a 500-mile round trip. Then our boss said something that made it all worthwhile. "I never liked that promoter anyway. He was always late paying his bills. Next time he calls for a crew, I think I'll tell him to fuck off." The core lesson here is that in any skilled trade, respect is earned through hard work and a willingness to learn, not through empty boasts and entitlement. The kid thought he was above the work, but in the end, the work left him behind. What's the most satisfying moment of karma you've ever witnessed in a workplace? Share your thoughts in the comments.